Hello and welcome back to Highway to Hoover, a production of SEC Extra over at D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, joined today by my good friend and D1 Baseball colleague, Aaron Fitt. This is his second appearance on the show, not only this fall, but ever.
That can't
So
be.
it was, yeah, you actually had the same exact reaction last time. I think verbatim, that's what you said.
I think that's
Um,
right.
yeah, so the first time was such a hit. We just couldn't, it's like Hollywood, right? Everything's about sequels these days. This
Mm.
is Joe and Aaron part two, Electric Boogaloo. Here, we just
Oh, yeah.
could not run this back. So today we're going to talk about Ole Miss and Alabama, two teams that Aaron saw this fall. Alabama playing Clemson in that had to be probably one of the better exhibitions in terms of quality and hype and atmosphere, all of those things. So excited to hear a little bit about that. We're going to start with Ole Miss here in a second, but first, I have to let you know that this episode of Highway to Hoover and every episode of Highway to Hoover is brought to you by Pitch Logic, the system used by players, coaches, scouts, and instructors at all levels of play, from youth leagues to the big leagues. The easy to use and affordable technology makes the platform accessible to every player at every level. All the metrics and features used at the highest level. See pitchlogic.com for more information. All right, that wasn't Darren Vaught level, but I'm getting better.
You listen, I'm going to give you at least like a 55 on that. That's a
Thank you.
tick above average.
Thank you. I realized about halfway through my energy was a little low, so I tried
Yeah.
to I tried to push it a little bit the second half of the read. We'll get there. Look, I mean, not everyone can be Darren Vaught, the voice of ECU men's basketball and High Point men's basketball home games. That's I think it's ESPN Plus for High
That,
Point. Anyway,
that,
we don't
that,
need to dive into Coach V's CV here.
yeah.
But yeah, regardless. Okay, let's talk Ole Miss. I'm going to start with the broadest possible question. I think I know where the answer is here, but I think it's
Mm.
kind of like what people ultimately kind of are curious about at this point with Ole Miss. Of the three options, which would you say is closest to true? This team is definitely better than what we've seen the last couple of years, and you think they're going to be right there, at least as a regional team. The other end of the spectrum, which is woof, it still looks like it's going to be kind of tough. This team might be really having to scratch and claw to even get in the periphery of the bubble discussion, or they're in the mushy middle, and depending on how things break, it could kind of go either way. What's your take?
I'm going to go 1 and 3. I think they are definitely better, but that still leaves them in the mushy middle in the SEC because there's just so many teams that are kind of like sure things. But I do
Yeah.
think they're definitely better. I mean, I think first and foremost, getting Hunter Elliott back, and he's now so far removed from surgery, what, like 2 years basically,
Right.
almost. I mean, it's it's not even really a factor. He was very good this fall from what I heard. I didn't see him, but this is an Omaha ace, right? I mean, like, I don't did we name him National Freshman of the Year? I know we talked about it. I don't know if we wound up doing it or not, but he was so good in the postseason. We talked about naming him National Freshman of the Year. I mean, he's a guy. There's not a lot of
Yeah.
teams that have an ace like that with that kind of track record. So, 100 plus innings there, you think, that's a great place to start, and that's, let's face it. I mean, the pitching has been the problem the last few years, and injuries have played a role in that, and just guys that have not quite made the steps forward that they were banking on. But now you've got some guys that have some experience here, um, and I think, and we can talk about the position players in a minute, but I mean, like, the pitching is really where they needed to get better the most, and again, having Elliott now, I think Riley Maddox is a reliable, power armed, um, proven SEC starter who I think can continue to get better. I mean, it was a 5.5 ERA last year. Granted, that's, kind of average-ish in this day and age in college baseball. That's not even really that high, but
It's true. It's true.
but yeah, but I think he can be better than that. I think he's good. And again, more experience now. Mason Nichols is still there and still a quality piece, as a veteran guy with experience. So you got those kind of, older guys that you can build this staff around. And I like the young guys on this staff, and again, it's hard to ask too much of young pitchers, but I think, unlike years past where maybe Ole Miss is headed into a season, it's like, gosh, we really need, JT Quinn and Grayson Saunier and these kind of unproven guys. Like, they, if these guys are dudes and can carry out a rotation, then we got a shot. Now I don't think Ole Miss needs, necessarily needs Owen Hancock or Patrick Galley to be like the tent poles of the staff. And I think Owen Hancock's going to be really good. It's a freshman that they got from the state of Georgia, I believe. A big bodied, like 6'5", lean lefty. It's how you draw a righty, rather. It's how you draw him up. I mean, I saw him, I think 93, 95, and it was more in the tank, obviously downhill, good slider with some power in the mid 80s. He got roughed up that day, but it was the end of the fall. It was pizza bowl, the very last day of the fall, but he's good. And he's, I think, going to be a star. Got a chance to be one of the next. They produced so many power pitchers in that program over the years. I think he's got a chance to be one of the next kind of star guys there. So I'm excited about him. I mean, there's depth there, Joe. I saw a bunch of guys in that game. I mean, Braden Jones, another veteran guy who's still there, 90 to 95, I think. Slider, Hudson Calhoun was up to 95. Sam Takoyan, another big-bodied joker, up to 95. I mean, all those guys have power sliders too. I mean, there's stuff here. There's stuff. There's depth. There's experience. I mean, Galley. I think it's Galley. Is it Galley? Patrick Galley?
I've not heard it said, but I think that's right.
I'm pretty sure it is. I don't think it's Galle.
Probably not.
He was up to 97, and the cutter, good cutter, like low 90s, like power pitch and slider. I mean, it's kind of like, whoa, I think he's a guy that could be a real breakout candidate as a sophomore. I believe he's a sophomore. So, plenty of guys. They got depth. And so I think they're going to be much better on the mound. I really believe that. And there's a whole bunch of other arms. Again, just one visit. Cade Townsend up to 95. Cole Ketchum, up to 93. He's more of a back end guy in that staff, and he's got stuff. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. And so, is there pitchability to match that stuff? We'll find out. I think there is. I think they have kind of a blend of that. With some of the experience that they've got, and that we've already talked about, and then some of the young guys, and you can kind of put it together that way. So, and Connor Spencer's still there. I mean, that's another proven kind of back end guy there. So there's a lot to like, I think, about the pitching. That's I guess my biggest impression.
I have big news on the Owen Hancock front. I looked it up. He is from the town of Sylvester, Georgia. It's in South Georgia. Population 5,644. Often dubbed, and brace yourself, the peanut capital of the world due to the peanut production in Sylvester, Georgia. So that's huge news, obviously.
Is that where Coach Jimmy Carter's from? Is that where he's from?
Coach Jimmy Carter? Let's see. Notable people.
Well-known peanut farmer. I don't know. Just throwing it out there.
He is a well-known peanut farmer. I don't believe
Georgia.
he's... Yeah. The notable people on Wikipedia from Sylvester, Georgia, several football players, none of whom that I've heard just off the top of my head that I've heard of. Jimmy Carter's deputy press secretary, Ray Jenkins, was born in Sylvester. So that's pretty close.
We nailed it.
Yeah, I think we came around on that. I'm now going to, he is from Plains, Georgia. Jimmy Carter
right.
is.
Man from Plains. How did I not know that? There's like a whole movie called Man from Plains, I think.
It's really another South Georgia city. Their population currently, because we're in and out. In the 2020 census, population 573 in Plains, Georgia. So
the things you learn on the Highway to Hoover podcast.
That's right. You're not getting this anywhere else.
No.
I can flatly say that. You mentioned the stuff on the mound, and I'm with you, but I'm also intrigued by, and who knows how much of a role they'll have, but I'm also intrigued by, like, in the portal, they go out and get, Alex Canny, isn't that his name, from Tampa?
Yeah.
And the McCausland guy from St. Joe's. And again, I don't think those are like, hey, let's plug and play those guys in the weekend rotation. But I talked about this with Darren Vaught on the ACC podcast. I do think there is something to, so often in the portal, teams are chasing stuff on the mound. And I wonder if there's actually some value in, like, go down to the lower D1 ranks or the D2 ranks and go find somebody who's thrown like 200 career innings and throws strikes and has enough stuff, but is just super experienced and not going to get freaked out and has enough stuff to get outs, but throws a bunch of strikes that you're not going to have to totally break down and rebuild as a pitcher.
Yeah.
And I kind of like those guys. I do think it gives them a unique look that I think could be really helpful.
Well, that's well said. And, I think there's a lot to be said for that. I mean, you look at it's I live in Durham. You used to live in Durham, and so we see plenty of Duke. But like that comes to that model, the success that they've had with some of those Ivy League guys or some of those smaller school guys coming down and just being experienced, kind of funky guys. I think that's a big part of their rise as a program. Honestly, and so in addition to the stuff and the raw talent, but like, yeah, I mean, Candy. I mean, hey, it's not going to overpower you, but it's like 89, 91 with some life, and cutter, slider, changeup, kind of up tempo, like relieverish look. I think he's going to throw strikes. He's going to compete. I like that guy. Why not? And McCausland, I think was pretty good up on the Cape. Stuff ticked up a little bit up there. Got some angle to him. So, I mean, yeah, those guys can help him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, just fewer innings where you're just like crossing your fingers that this guy who throws 96 is going to throw strikes, Anyway, so as we shift to the position player side of things, it's interesting. There's so much of a question about what Ole Miss is going to do on the mound because that's been the Achilles heel, if you will, the last couple of years. But I'm in a position now where, and not just based on what you said, as I've done my own just kind of looking into this team, I'm kind of weirdly more confident in the pitching staff than I am in the lineup right now, where, you look at it and okay, they brought in some nice pieces, Isaac Humphrey, Ryan Moorman, what have you, but you're looking at a situation where like Luke Hill's going to have to be a really important piece of this. And that's no disrespect to Luke Hill, but he's a guy who hit under 300 last year, hasn't shown a ton of physicality at the plate, had a nice second half. I think he did a really nice job turning his season around. But when you look at the SEC lineups that they're going to be dealing with, there's really no comparison in terms of proven guys for Ole Miss compared to what they're going to see. So tell me a little bit about what you took away from the position player side.
Yeah, that's. I think all that is fair. It's fair to wonder because they have a lot to prove there. I mean, now you lose a Jackson Ross, kind of an older veteran piece. You lose Andrew Fisher, who had 20 home runs last year in the portal. Ethan Groff had been there so long, so those guys are gone. And so there's an opportunity for, you mentioned Luke Hill, but here's the thing. I think going into last year, they really needed Luke Hill to be like a centerpiece. I don't know that that's the case this year. I think he's, they don't even play shortstop. They brought in, a couple other guys. I think Luke Chang is from Illinois State, is a really slick defender. He can play short, or Owen Pano, this very exciting freshman. That guy is going to be a big star. He's kind of like advanced in a way that Jacob Gonzalez was advanced at the same age. Remember the first time I ever saw Gonzalez that first fall of his freshman year, instantly it's like, oh yeah, this guy's ready. Like he's a guy. Pano's like that too. And he's rangy and real arm strength. So, I mean, he's their shortstop of the future and maybe of the present, but he's going to have to earn that spot because they've got Luke Chang, who can, is an older guy that can really defend. But in any case, you don't need to rely on Luke Hill to try to play short. You probably will see Hill at second base, and I like him at second base. And I think maybe that kind of unlocks maybe some more offense potentially. But if not, maybe he's a 2-hole guy, maybe he's a 7-hole guy. They've upgraded, I think, the position players. I love the addition of Mitchell Sanford. Again, an older guy, started his career at LSU, went to New Orleans, kind of became a star. He was great, Joe, when I was in there. And it's a left-handed hitter with speed and power, quiet, mature approach, and can hit the ball to all fields. I saw, exit velocities in the 103, 103, 105. I mean, just lasers everywhere, just tattooing the ball. He's got power. He could really defend in center field. Like that's a guy that kind of, again, I guess you call him a post-hype sleeper because at one time he was a guy at LSU and then I had to leave in order to kind of come into his own. But now he's really good. He's a really good player. So I love that addition. I think you can look for Judd Utermark to have that breakout year we've been waiting on. And obviously staying healthy has been kind of the thing for him. And, he got to play some last year. I think he played about half their games and didn't really hit. But, I mean, he's got all the tools, I think Mike Bianco likes to compare him to Rob Gronkowski. He's like that kind of physical athlete. I tell you what, they had him at third base. He was better there than I expected. Like the mobility, he's so big, and I know he could run. Underway. One thing if you're in the outfield and you're running down balls, but like the quickness surprised me at third. And obviously he can really throw. He's got big power. He's kind of like, I think Coach Bianco said it could be like that Tim Elko type career trajectory where it took him a few years, to be healthy and to kind
Yeah.
of, but Elko was also like big bodied guy who, when he was younger, before he blew out his knees, he could run and had power and like was tantalizing. And so maybe Utermark is kind of on that track, and that could be a real difference maker for him. But so you got those two guys. I do believe Campbell Smithwick is ready to make a jump offensively. I really believe he can hit. Now, they knew they needed to improve behind the plate last year. That really hurt him last year. And he's gotten better. They've worked with him, but they've also, again, bolstered that position. Brought in this Colin Reuter from BYU, big physical veteran catcher that they like, and he can play back there. They got it was Austin Foley, who I didn't see, but from Kentucky. They seem to really like him as well. So you've got more depth behind the plate, and so if Smithwick doesn't, can't quite do it the way they would like him to do it, they've got other options. So there's, again, a little less pressure there, just like there's less pressure on Hill. And so I think that helps. And then you've got more power there too with Humphrey coming in. That's a guy that can hit the ball out of the park from the left side. You still got Will Furness, big left-handed power. We know that. So I think we have some firepower, some athleticism. I think they've upgraded their up the middle defense, which had to be a big priority. I think it's a lot better, from catcher through the middle of the field and into center field with Sanford. So I like the position player group. I walked away, Joe, with kind of low expectations for Ole Miss. I walked in with kind of low expectations, and I walked away thinking, like this is a team that people are probably just writing off that could surprise people. I could see it. I really could.
For those listening, Aaron Fitt's official grade on Ole Miss this fall is That's his official grade.
Oh,
you put a on him.
You could put that on the board.
Yeah, that's right. It's better than when you came in, when you were just like, You're more like, when you came in, and then afterward you were like,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a for sure upgrade. No, I'm with you there.
For sure upgrade. And it's it's also interesting because like I like their freshman class a lot, and it's just going to be a matter of like how much do these guys see the field. We're seeing so much of this around the country in this era where everybody's so old. How much are these freshmen going to get to see the field and develop on the fly? I'm intrigued by that because there's some real talent in that class. Obviously, we've talked about Pano and Hancock, but there's others. Cade Townsend, Ethan's. I don't know this pronunciation yet. Soroit.
Heroic, maybe.
Yeah, big juice. He's a strong body kid. There's Hayden Federico. I mean, there's some younger guys that they like. That there's depth here. I do think there's depth here. I really do think they've got more insurance if things go wrong than maybe they've had in the last year or two.
Yeah, quick. My take on the catcher situation, because I was going to ask you about it, and you summed it up nicely. But it's one of those things where it's just, I feel like, and look, Mike Bianco has forgotten more about catching 10 times over than you and I will ever know. But it's just like he was such a guy going into last season. It just feels like you got to give him another real chance.
Yeah.
Because if he's going to be what you think he could be and you thought he was a year ago, like you have to give him that opportunity. So that I'd be surprised if they do anything different than like, hey, let's give him a real shot. Now, do you give him a month? Do you give him 6 weeks? I don't know, but it just feels like you got to try.
Yeah, I agree.
Where I land there. Yeah,
well, I absolutely agree. And again, it just Mike Bianco sounded optimistic about his development, and sometimes it takes catchers, especially. It can take you a year. That's a lot to take in as a true freshman. So let's keep the door open here for Campbell Smithwick to come out and be that star in year 2. It could happen.
Yeah, let's take a turn to Tuscaloosa, talk about Alabama here. Although that Clemson exhibition was not in Tuscaloosa, ? Where did they play that?
It was in Tuscaloosa. Yep.
Oh, it was in Tuscaloosa. I stand corrected. Beautiful ballpark they have out there. I was there for the regional a couple of years ago. Interesting team to me, because I don't say this pejoratively, but they're a team that kind of feels like they're maybe, this is going to sound pejorative, like stuck in the transfer cycle where they were old. And then they last year they were able to kind of cobble it together with some more transfers, but that group was old, and now they're back to, they've got some younger guys for sure, but between JUCO guys and portal guys, they're going to be, especially because their JUCO guys are some of their best prospects and players. They've got, they're old again. So, it's one of those things where it creates a little bit of pressure. I feel like that you've got to be, regional quality team every single year because you're just kind of resetting the roster. Regardless, I have a feeling I know. We'll start with position players so I can let you rave about what you saw there, because I know there was one player in particular, there might be multiple, that you really, really liked on the position player side that have you bullish on Alabama.
Yeah, Bryce Fowler. That's who I'm going for here. I liked this guy a couple of years ago at Southern Miss in the fall. I think it was 2021 or 22. I don't remember what year it was now, because he wound up going to JUCO after that. But he kind of came in as a raw athlete, two-way guy, and it just needed some development. And they liked him there, but it just didn't have a spot for him to develop. And so he went to did he go to Pearl River, I think. He did go to Pearl River.
He did,
obviously a great JUCO program, and performed there. And he Joe, I mean, I saw the makings of five tools there. It's just a twitchy, athletic, left-handed hitter who can run, I saw plus arm. I saw power, bat speed. He homered to right field and had hit a double, a couple balls just on the screws. I saw pretty good swing decisions. And I think that's maybe the one tool that, is the question is how much has the hit tool developed now? I think when David Seifert saw Alabama, he wasn't completely convinced, but again, and I only saw him one look too. I'm not going to draw sweeping conclusions from one look, but I liked the approach that I saw. I'm just talking briefly to Rob Vaughn. It sounds like he's really matured in that respect. And so if that hit tool comes, that's five tools. And then he could be a guy, like he could be a real dude. So that one is super exciting. And you pair him with, and I don't know if they can, set the lineup this way in the spring, but they had Fowler and Justin Lebron 1-2 in their order. And that's, talk about exciting duo. I love Justin Lebron. I don't know if this was the guy you expected me to talk about or not, actually, but
yeah, well, it was mostly just Fowler, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I wanted to leave the door open to maybe there are others but Justin LeBron certainly is the headliner here among returners.
Sure.
Yeah.
For my money, it's if you're looking at the best shortstops in the country, my list probably starts with Merrick Houston. And LeBron might be 1A, 1B. And you could throw Ava Arquette, Oregon State, in that mix if you want, but I love Justin LeBron. I just think, the defense is, for me, is special. That maybe separates him from like the Arquette class for me. And he hit last year, man, for a wiry little joker. He hit 12 home runs, slugged 546. There's more in the tank. It's an exciting guy. He's awesome. And he played great, against Clemson. But that's no surprise. We know what he is. So you got those two guys. You got some veteran guys like, Will Hodo and Kate Snell hanging around who are back, that I think that they can rely on. Nice left-handed bats there. You bring in a Brady Neal, another left-handed hitter, with plenty of experience, from LSU. And I think that stabilizes them behind the plate. They did well last year with Matt Cassetti bringing in a transfer from the SEC ranks, and they've done it again with Brady Neal. I think that's a nice addition. Plug him right in there. And then another JUCO guy, you alluded to the JUCO group that they brought in. I think this Richie Bonamolo, I believe is how we say that one. That's a
you can try the third time if you want. You want to do it again? You want to try it a third time?
Richie Bonamolo Jr.
Yeah, Junior. Yeah, don't forget.
From Wabash Valley, exciting, athletic, kind of explosive, like compact athlete, like a 6 foot, just kind of dynamic player that he hit cleanup for him in this scrimmage. He didn't have a great day, but he showed some bat speed and struck out a couple of times, but they like him a lot too. I think that's going to be a really key addition for him. Actually, he had a pretty good day, because in the second day he had 3 hits. So you forget it. He had a pretty good day.
All right.
Showed the ability to drive the ball the other way too, which I always like to see that.
Yeah, starting with LeBron, I think it can't be undersold how important that is for Alabama, not just from a 2025 standpoint, but look, this is a guy that, I don't know that I necessarily agree with him, but if Chris Burke tells me, hey, he could be 1-1 in 2026, I'm going to listen.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know that I necessarily agree, but he knows what he's talking about, so I
I,
respect that opinion.
you know what?
Um,
Why can't it be a Dansby Swanson kind of a
right. Yeah.
trajectory, right? And he played more
Right.
as a freshman than Dansby didn't play at all as a freshman. But like, yeah, I mean, I kind of see that sort of tool set and upside. Yeah, Berkey's onto it. I'm with him.
Yeah.
1-1.
Yeah. You never know when you've got a Paul Skeens lurking around that as a junior is just going to be like, oh, supernova type thing, but based on the trajectory he's on, like that seems plausible. And I think the holding on to him, which might sound like an obvious thing because, oh, it's Alabama, it's the SEC, but understand that, and I know anybody listening to this probably understands this, like there are tiers within the SEC of things like NIL money and opportunity for various things. Like, so him sticking around was not necessarily just, I doubt Rob Vaughn was just taking that for granted. I'll put it that way. So him choosing to double down on being at Alabama is huge, not just from, sure, he's a great player who's going to make their team better, but also like, look, even if he goes in the top 5-10 picks, I mean, that's just a huge thing for your program to be able to sell that you produced a player of that caliber. So that's, again, I don't think we can undersell how important it is that they held onto him in the small picture and the big picture. So that's one thing. And you mentioned one name that I think is particularly important here that I think is easy to overlook, and that's Cade Snell.
Yeah.
Guy hit 343 in the SEC last year.
Hmm.
He got hot late. I think he had an injury last fall or something.
Right.
Like, felt like maybe that contributed to a slow start. But once he got going, he really got going. And it's a guy out of JUCO last year that I know Seif was really excited about. Yeah. And, maybe he does a little something on the mound too, but I think his bat is probably where he's most helpful for them.
Yes.
So, that's probably a piece I'm not giving enough credit for. Look, it's not the sexiest, like, he's not like this behemoth of a guy in the batter's box who, he's got kind of a little bit of a, funky swing and operation, but like the dude can hit. So
it's feel for the barrel. It's real
yeah,
feel for
for
the barrel
sure.
from the left
Yeah.
side. And I think it's gonna guy that can hit 25 doubles this year. I think he's getting a lot of
Yeah.
doubles and
That
some home runs.
feels about right. As we move to the mound, I have a specific question, but you can use the answer to that as a jumping off point for larger discussions about the pitching staff. Does Zane Adams strike you as kind of a guy who you think could be a real Friday guy in the SEC?
Absolutely. And I didn't see him this fall, but I have seen him before, and I'm very high on him. Rob's very high on him. He's very excited about that one. Yes, and that kind of needs to happen. I think is they need him to be a frontline guy. He's got that kind of talent, obviously, and I think gaining experience last year as a true freshman in the SEC, made a bunch of starts. I mean, he'll only get better. That will benefit him for sure.
Yeah, and I think that if you're an Alabama fan, I think you have to look at how well this team has done the last couple of years, despite, let's be honest, things not really going according to plan on the mound. Like last year, like, all right, Ben Hess is back and he's healthy and here we go. And he had his moments.
Yeah, and Aiden Moza, we were all excited
Right.
about. He finished with 10 ERA, and it's
Right.
like
Yeah, but they got, Zane Adams stepped up, but so did Greg Ferrone, right?
Yeah.
And Greg Ferrone went into the year like, well, I'm not really sure exactly where he fits. And then the year before, it's like they kind of backed their way into Luke Holman, right? And so they've, I don't want to say lucked into it because that's not the correct term, but they have manufactured good pitching staffs despite never really having the guys they expected to have be what they thought they would be, right? You go back to Connor Prelip, right? They've been dealing with this forever. And yet they continue to figure it out. Obviously, Jason Jackson is a huge part of that. But yeah, I'm excited about Zane Adams and the possibility of him being a real Friday guy. But let's talk about the pitching staff more writ large now. Who else catches your eye among the Alabama pitchers?
Well, and I'll add also that, again, I didn't see a bunch of their top guys were shut down. This was toward the end of their fall, but I think they also are very excited about where Tyler Fay is at this stage of development. I think that's another piece that, again, we knew he was a talented guy. He showed flashes of it. He didn't have a great year last year, but I think, again, valuable experience. Could be, I think another weekend starter candidate is, I believe, how they're kind of envisioning him. So there's some talented guys that they can kind of build that staff around. Out of the guys that I saw, so Bo Bryans started the first game against Clemson, kind of a low 3/4, around the corner type lefty, up to 93. With one of those low release ride guys. I like that. I always like that look, and showed me enough feel for a slider. So didn't have a great outing, but I think that's going to be an important piece for him. He came from JUCO ranks. I think you can look for him to have a key role. I don't know if he's a starter or a bullpen guy, but TBD. But that piece is nice. I think Austin Morris, another guy that threw in that game, big right-hander up to 93. A lot of tilt on the slide piece. Feel for the changeup. Let's see, Morris was he was there last year, like just kind of a bullpen role, I believe, and so that's another one that I think will be an important bullpen arm here. I mean, again, everybody's got stuff nowadays, and JT Blackwood was up to 93. Danny Heintz, who they brought in from Blackwood was a JUCO transfer. Heights was from Penn. One of those older guys like we've talked about that brings you some experience and some pitchability, solid average slider, that kind of thing. Those are nice options. Carson Osmer, low slot joker, sidearm guy
with some stuff though. Like it's stuff. Like it's not just kind of flinging it. He's got real stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's again another Penn guy, but yeah, I think he's up to 89 from that low slot, with some life and sweeper. He can alter the slot a little bit, go to low 3/4, manipulate it. I liked it. He showed me some feel for pitching, so those are good arms to add. This VZ Joker, Ariston VZ is a intriguing. It's a great name, Ariston. I'm going to say. Sophomore breakout candidate, came in as a catcher and kind of a converted guy. Maybe it came as a two-way guy, but he had more experience as a catcher. And it's just like a strong, wiry, high slot guy with ride up to 96. He was like 93, 96 against Clemson. Struck out a couple guys with a fastball and shows you, the makings of a curveball, kind of big downer curve. I'd like to see kind of more of a tighter power, more of a power breaking ball, but that's maybe the next step for him. But looks the part, really exciting arm there. So I saw some of their younger guys in the second game against Clemson, and there's some building blocks. I don't know that a lot of those guys are going to be crucial pieces. I mean, Tate Robertson will be a nice, I think, bullpen piece, most likely. He can really spin that slider. I think it'd be a good left on left option. I just don't know that he sustains his stuff well enough to go more than an inning or two. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's hard to really get a feel for this staff when I didn't see a lot of their better arms on this day, but
fair.
Have heard reports on them. I'm going to circle back and talk with their coaching staff and get some more. But I mean, I think they've got a couple of nice, power arm guys to build it around, and they did a good job bringing in some more pitchability types to kind of complement those guys.
One of my favorite things is when you hear someone give you a player comp, and most of the time you get a contemporary player comp, like someone who's in the current day. But I saw Bo Bryans on the Cape, and somebody threw a John Tudor comp at me.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. See, that's dynamite. That's like, I was talking with John Sheff at Virginia Tech. He made multiple comps to like Phillies players from like 40 years ago. And sure, it's one thing to comp a guy physically and athletically to Steve Carlton. Like we all know what Steve Carlton looks like, but the Von Hayes comp, that one caught me off guard. I enjoyed a good Von Hayes comp.
Yeah, then you don't know if look, you and I both, used to do some in previous lives, do prospect coverage and prospect writing. And I understand that it's a thing that fans get disappointed if you tell them that their prospects aren't going to be Mike Trout. If the comp is not Mike Trout, they're like, oh, these guys are trash. But genuinely, like, I know the name Von Hayes, but it's like, is that a good comp? I don't know. Like, it was.
Speaking of Mike Trout, I would go ahead and shovel dirt on my own grave here. During my BA days, I was doing the Northeast, and the year Mike Trout came out of high school, and I comped him to a pretty good comp, I'd say. A fellow 5-tool player by the name of Aaron Rowand, which I think was pretty spot on comp from
no
Mike
doubt.
Trout. So
no doubt. Yeah, I've often put those two guys in the same breath. I would say Aaron Rowand and Mike Trout.
I think I got that from a scout, though. I can't take all the blame on that.
Yeah. Shout out to Cal State Fullerton, Aaron Rowand.
That's right.
Late 90s Fullerton guy. Well, good stuff. Yeah, two teams I'm intrigued by. Obviously Ole Miss has, I mean, we're all adults here. We understand that like there's pressure there at Ole Miss. They win the national title and much like their rival in Starkville, like immediately afterward just kind of fell on their face. And so there's pressure there to get things at least turned back around and headed in the right direction. With Alabama, I think the one thing you can really say about what Rob Vaughn has done in a short period of time is it feels like the way he's been able to, as I alluded to at the top, turn the roster over a couple times and still put teams on the field that feel like regional teams, I think is good news for Alabama's floor in the SEC. Now, the ceiling, I think we'll have to see because, we saw what A&M did this offseason in roster building. We know what Texas is capable of. Like, there are just some difference at LSU, obviously. So the ceiling, I think, will be a little more variable for Alabama, but I love where they are as a program right now in terms of it just feels like their floor is right there as a regional team every single year. And I feel pretty confident given Rob Vaughn's history, that's what they're going to be. And I think that's good news if you're an Alabama fan.
Yeah, that's well said, especially, you pointed out earlier, but just it didn't exactly go to plan last year. Like it's not how they drew up that team, and they still kind of like scrapped their way into regional. It wasn't a great year, but like anytime you're in the SEC is kind of one of those middle tier teams, and some of your key guys don't really pan out the way you think. And 13-17 in the league, it's borderline regional, but they got in. They grinded through it and got there. And so that's a successful season for that club.
They overcame a weekend where all of their players were throwing up all over the place. Do you remember that little,
that's right.
Little story during the season?
Tough scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Really, a really tough one. The guys who skipped the team meal that night have never looked smarter than on that evening. Yeah. Yes. So yeah, should be fun to see what these two teams bring to the table in 2025. Two teams I had a lot of questions about, and Aaron Fitt helped us get closer to answering some of those questions.
Did I? Answered. I hope I did.
So. I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's like at this point though, like bottom line, if you ask me to bottom line it, I don't know. Like there is a range of outcomes here for these teams. And I, ultimately, like it feels like these two teams are going to be in that gooey middle. You're just kind of scrapping and clawing to get into a regional. And then who knows, once you get into a regional, certainly if their pitching comes together, again, I hate to say I like Ole Miss's pitching better because I saw some of Ole Miss's better arms. I did not see Bama's better arms.
Right.
So like I'm gonna with reserve judgment on that, but I think I'm a little higher on the Ole Miss pitching. So if they hit, and you mentioned that's a question mark, Bama might be a little bit of a safer bet to hit. So I don't know. It's this could play out a lot of different ways, but ultimately, this league is as competitive as ever. I would think these are both regional caliber clubs, and we'll see if they can reach that ceiling.
Yeah, Mark and I talk about this ad nauseum. Anybody who listens to most of our episodes will know this, but it's just there's going to be some team that's pretty good but has two injuries it can't sustain, and it's going to go 11-19 in the league, and that's all she wrote, right? And you're going to be 2 wins away from having maybe been a regional team, but you just couldn't deal with that one other arm that got injured, and that's just kind of the reality in this league. And so again, I circle back as my closing thought here. Alabama had that happen last year, and yet a team that, was just kind of okay, if we're being honest, found a way to a regional, and we shouldn't take that for granted. I don't think so. Yeah. Impressive stuff there. All right, that sounds like an episode. That is going to do it for this edition of the Highway to Hoover podcast, a production of SEC Extra over at d1baseball.com. I want to thank Pitch Logic for sponsoring this and every episode of the Highway to Hoover podcast. I'd like to thank Aaron Fitt once again for joining me on this episode. And I'd like to thank you, the listeners, as always, for listening.